Project 12-6 goes over setting up SSH. That is the preferred protocol to use instead of Telnet, as in the last project. We're going to go through this lab, and I'm also going to show a X server that you can install into Windows, and you can use SSH and the X server to launch graphical applications on a Unix system, but have them displayed on a Windows machine to make them appear as native Windows applications. So I'm going to add some stuff into Project 12-6 that is not in the lab. First off, we're going to go into CentOS and log in. I'm going to go into the desktop instead of the terminal 2. I'm going to be in a terminal logged in as root. Again, I was left there from the previous lab. I see my pound sign. So now I'm in as root. It wants me to check, do I have Telnet or SSH running? So I'm looking for SSHD. I do have SSHD. By default, that is installed and running on a CentOS. It is a secure way to remotely administer a server. And most servers are administered from remote instead of local. Now the following commands, if it was not started, would start the service. So the system control enable SSHD service and system control start SSHD service would both enable it in systemd and then start the service. If you're running Fedora, it is probably shut down by default. Since it's not a server, it's more of a desktop system. So I'm not going to do step 3. If you don't show SSHD on the screen like mine, then you will need to do step 3 and enable and then start the service. The semicolon lets you type it all in one line, or you could do them separate. You do the enable and then the start on a second line. Let's try to log in SSH root at localhost. Anytime that you connect to a secure server for the first time, they will exchange a thumbprint, a unique random key to help identify the systems from to prevent man-in-the-middle attacks in the future. So I'm going to type yes the first time I've connected to SSH. I'll log in as pass1234. It won't ask me that again unless for some reason SSH is reconfigured or something bad is going on, such as somebody is being a man in the middle and trying to steal information. I'm going to type in who. Let's see, I'm logged in as root into PTS1 sudo terminal, and it's local. I'm not going in remote. So I'm going to type in exit. Here I'm in as the graphical desktop. It definitely wants us to be in GNOME as sample user 1, so I'm already there. If not, go and switch and log in as sample user 1 into GNOME. Now they do SSH-X. That stands for transmit X windows across the network through SSH. Root at localhost. Log in as pass1234. This is simulating connecting to a remote system from one Linux system to another. The system config ADRT will bring up problem reporting and configuration tool. I'll go ahead and close that and click or type in exit. Now here I'm going to add in information that's not in the lab. My logout seems to be stuck, so I'm going to just go and hit the right control C on the keyboard to kill that. But here, instead of switching and logging in as user 1, I'm going to try this from Windows machine and try to get logged in. First, let's minimize the CentOS and let's try the Putty program before we try this other one. So go ahead and double click Putty. I know it has you do that here in a little bit, but I'll go and try that now. I'm going to type in the IP address of my CentOS. and by default it's already set to SSH. So when I open, it asks me, do you trust this one? New fingerprint, install it. Yes. And then I can log in as root and pass 1, 2, 3, 4 and get into the system. The only thing is I cannot run graphical tools. Everything is command line through Putty. So I'm going to go and exit out. If I want graphical tools to be run, I'd go to my web browser and I'd go to Google and I would find a program called Xming and download it. So here from SourceForge, we can download Xming. It looks like it's version 6.9 and install it into Windows. Once that's installed, it will show and run down by your clock. It'll be a little X. It should say like Xming server 0:0. You can't see that on the video, but I've started an Xming server up after installing it. And then you would run a xlaunch utility. So you'd find that under your start menu or search for it and search for xlaunch. This will come up. We'll want to connect to display number 1. Display number 0 is attached to the currently running GNOME interface. So I'm going to need to change the display to display number 1, saying that the display number 1 is going to be running on my Windows machine. So any graphical tools will connect to display number 1 and it'll connect to the IP address of my Windows machine and draw stuff on my screen. So I'll go next. I'm going to start a program. I'll go next. I'm going to run xterm. And we don't have xterm in Windows. We have to connect to our CentOS system. So I'm going to run xterm from a remote computer. So use Putty and type in the IP address of the CentOS computer that you have in Notepad. You should have recorded that from 12-5. I'm going to log in as root. And I'll put in pass 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll hit next. I'll go and leave all of this as default and click next. And then I'll click finish. And if lucky, I will get an xterm window. So this right here is running a graphical window, and I can type any graphical tools such as system config -avrt. I'll put the and symbol out there at the end so it sends it to the background and I get my command prompt back. And as you see, it launches the tool. This is running on CentOS, which you would have to imagine would be at a remote location somewhere, not on your Windows machine. So this is being displayed on Windows. You notice I don't have my CentOS virtual machine up and going. It's down here minimized in my taskbar. But I'm seeing the tools that are on it. And I can launch another program such as kwrite. That is a text editor in the KDE desktop environment. So here it launches. I now have two graphical programs that look like they're running in Windows, but they're actually just being drawn on the screen in Windows. They're running on the Linux system. If I hit open, I won't see my Windows files. I will only see the files and volumes on the Linux server because it's running on Linux. Like I said, just drawing the stuff in the Windows machine. So there's no C drive. I see all the folders and stuff and files in CentOS 7. So that's pretty neat. That's what a lot of administrators do. Their Linux servers are in a data center somewhere, and they use the Xming protocol in Putty to remotely administer the Linux servers. Most Linux servers run without a graphical interface, but some do have graphical tools and programs that run, so they use Xming instead of going to the actual server itself. I'm going to close all of these down and then exit out of my X terminal. Now I'm going to continue on with the lab. It tells us to go back in as sample user 1. Actually, it says drop to the command line and log in to the Ubuntu system. I can still do that from the graphical. I can type in SSH user1 at and put the IP address of Ubuntu, which was 20.15 on my system, and hit enter. And I'll type in yes, I want to continue connecting. Secret is the password. So now I'm on the Ubuntu. You see it says Ubuntu 01. And type in su minus root. I didn't have to put root, but that'll switch me over to the root account. It wants us to edit the etc sshd underscore config file. It wants us to find, so we scroll down, permit root logon, and it wants us to change the without password here to yes. So before, I think it would allow you to log in as root as long as you had a certificate and not a password to log into the system. This right here, permit root logon, will allow you to log on as a root account using a password. Most of the time, if I'm setting up a production server, I always set root logon to no. So I have to log in as a regular user account and then switch over to the root account. That would stop scripts and stuff on the internet that try to run and brute force the password for the root account. If you disable root logon, they could just try password after password after password and it would never accept it. So once that's saved, I'll do a service SSH reload. Now they want us to exit and try to log in. You need to exit one more time. So I'm back at the CentOS prompt. And now I'm going to hit my up arrow, and instead of user 1, I'm going to change it to root. Before it would fail. But now that we said permit root logon, I can log on to the Ubuntu server as the root account. CentOS has a similar configuration file, and I believe the default, as we see on it, root is allowed to log in. Always go in and edit that file and change it to no. Now we can issue a command on a remote computer. So we're going to run SSH as the root user on Ubuntu. And we're going to run the following command on Ubuntu: cat/etc/issue. And then we're going to redirect it. And this here, after the redirector, will be to a local file on CentOS. I'll type in the root password. And then I will look and see that the issue file contains the version of the Ubuntu server. So I can see that it is running Ubuntu 14.04.2. That's one way to get files. Actually, this didn't really get a file across. It ran the cat command, and then the standard output was redirected to the local computer. To do something a little bit different, maybe I want to copy the host file into my root folder. So this is beyond the lab here. I would use secure copy, SCP, secure copy. So I'm going to secure copy root at the Ubuntu server, colon, and then a file path. So I'm going to copy the host file here at my local. So it transferred the file. I'll look at it and see that that is my Ubuntu host file. So you can securely copy files between systems. So if you don't want somebody to be able to monitor the network and steal the file that you're transferring back and forth, you can use SCP command. There's a graphical tool in Windows. You can download it. It's called WinSCP. It's WinSCP. This is another thing that administrators do. They'll install this free utility and use it to log in and drag and drop files from a Linux machine. Here's the WinSCP utility in Windows. I'm going to make a new connection, and I'm going to type in the Ubuntu server address. We'll use root pass 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, you shouldn't ever really use that. You should use a regular user account and don't log in as root, because you should have that disabled. So for simplicity purposes, I'm going to go ahead and just click yes, and click yes here to install the fingerprint for WinSCP. When it comes up, WinSCP shows you files on your local C drive, and then it shows you files on the remote system. If you notice, I am in the root home folder. I can pick a file out of Windows. Let me go to my desktop, and there's this job interview file right here. I'll just drag and drop it and tell it to copy over, so you don't have to do command line stuff with the with this utility on copying. You can just drag and drop files back and forth. It is copied securely. You can see here, secure FTP protocol, so nobody can see the password going across. Nobody can see what files are going across. It does take much longer, because if you got a big file, it has to encrypt it. I'll close WinSCP down, and let me go into Ubuntu. Or actually, nope, I'm not SSH'd anymore. Let me go into the Ubuntu server. I'm in my root home folder. I'll type in ls, and there's the job file that I transferred from Windows to Linux. So this right here, notice the less command can view PDF files. That's kind of a neat thing. It's now the graphics that would be in a PDF file would be viewable, but that was one of the job files. Okay, I'll let you finish 2-6 and 2-7 on your own. The last part of 2-6 is just looking at mostly the known host file, and seeing the fingerprint of other machines that you've connected to is added to a known host file. That prevents man-in-the-middle attacks. Once you've connected to a machine the first time, the signature is placed into that file, and it's the same signature every time. So if anybody's trying to pretend to be that host, it will not match the signature, and you'll get a warning on the screen, meaning you need to back out and figure out what's going on. Did somebody update or change the remote computer you're trying to log into?